Dragana Nikoliq Solomon, you are Jewish as well as a British Montenegrin citizen. You were visiting Tel Aviv when the Hamas attack happened. Tell me, how was it? Where were you at the very time? Which city and what happened?
Jeta, përshëndetje nga Tel Avivi, dhe dashuri për miqtë e mi, I veçanërisht familjes Berisha e Dekurinja. I have to say that first because I have a lot of friends who are worried about me in Pristina. I'm fine. I woke up last Saturday at 6:30 when my cousin came into the room in Tel Aviv where we are staying, 40 minutes away from the kibbutzim, the kibbutz towns that were attacked from Hamas. She said to me, come immediately to the shelter. Yet I have to tell you that every Israeli house by law has a shelter room. It's called mamad. And the shelter room is specially built with the doors to stop the chemical war. So we got up. I was in my pajamas, totally shocked, because just a couple of days ago, we were celebrating the wedding of my nephew. The day before, we went for lunch. It's lovely weather. Tel Aviv has a lovely beach. It's a lovely, vibrant city. And suddenly, that happened.
In the meantime, since that day, 1,000 people have been killed on both sides. 1,000 Israelis.
2,500 on both sides.
Now 2,500 on both sides. There's Israelis who are still missing and kidnapped. 400,000 displaced Palestinians in Gaza, according to international aid organizations. What do you think is going to happen, Dragana, considering you are a person who's worked in Kosovo in international missions, you've worked in Ukraine. How do you see this evolving?
First of all, yet I just want to give you a little bit of information on civilians on both sides. Israeli television is showing the photos from Gaza. So we see that the bombing is extensive. It's almost like they want to raze it to the ground. It's a very small piece of land where 2 million Palestinians live. Half of them are children. They've been just warned today by the Israeli forces that the people living in the north of Gaza have to immediately, in the next 24 hours, move to the south because there will be very serious military intervention. Hamas is telling them not to go and to stay where they are. They are cut off from electricity, water, and diesel. Here in Israel, the whole nation is in deep, deep trauma. Since the beginning of Israel, nobody can remember the massacre, the slaughter, the rape at this scale. Amongst those 150 hostages, there are babies, 6-month-old babies. They are children who are 3 or 4 years old. They killed children. They raped women. They opened the bellies of the pregnant women and killed their babies. So this has been enabled by the total failure of the Israeli military and security, because Hamas were left rampant for 7 to 8 hours in this 20 kibbutzim that they took over. These are not people who are settlers in the West Bank. These kibbutzim were found in 1920s by people who wanted communities to deal with agriculture. They sit within 1967 Israeli border. So it's important to know that this is going on. I think that this will happen.
I appreciate this as a Jewish person. You as well are speaking. Yes, you are speaking of the crimes against the Jewish population, but as well on the retributions happening in Gaza. So that's why I will push you further and ask you, is it in accordance with international law what Israel is doing in Gaza, cutting water, electricity, and diesel, considering, Dragana, that Israel is a democratic country. It's in the middle of a region which is not so democratic, and as a democratic country, is it applying Geneva Conventions when it is responding in retaliation, in revenge against an entire civilian population?
Cutting of the water electricity supplies will be stopped once the kidnapping citizens are returned back. Personally, my opinion is I forgot details of the international laws, and as you can appreciate, I don't have a means to study it right now. I do think that it is in the past when Israeli jets were bombing Gaza, Gazans were told in Arabic exactly which building at what time. Now the information is a little bit less because there is a military, huge-scale intervention going on. But I just want to ask you back, what can Israeli do? What can Israeli do after 1,200 people were murdered? 2,500 Hamas terrorists entered into Israel.
Do you think it's impossible because we are not aware of logistics? Isn't it possible to go after Hamas without going after Palestinians, of whom there's a lot of them who don't support Hamas? Isn't it possible to go after Hamas and not the civilians?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure about that because ever since Hamas got into power, and let me just tell you, there were no elections since 2006 in Gaza, since Hamas, terrorist organization Hamas, got into the power. Mm-hmm. So there were no, for all this time, they had no elections. They were receiving at least $1 billion of help from Qatar since 2012, for example. They could have used this money to improve universities, to build schools. Instead, they built a very sophisticated system of tunnel system that connected them with Egypt, that they used to smuggle arms to fight Israel. Hamas says in their charter that they want to create Islamic State at the borders of historic Palestine, and they are not, at all. They're very clear in their message that they want to kill Jewish people and they want to destroy the land of Israel. It's very clear. So it's a very difficult situation for Israeli army. How do you find Hamas, who are probably in these tunnels, in luxuriously built tunnels? By the way, the first thing that the Israeli army did was to actually bomb the Beverly Hills of Gaza. This is where Hamas high officials live in luxury and in their villas while the Gazans suffer. And
I want to draw a little bit of your attention and parallels, since you are a person who worked in Kosovo and worked in Ukraine. In Kosovo, in ULEX, in Ukraine, you were with OSCE when the initial war started there. Tell me, do you see how do you sense the Russian influence in fueling Hamas? You spoke about Qatar's help to Hamas. You spoke about Egypt's help and the tunnels. Do you see Russian influence?
Of course. I have to say, yet I forgot to, just for your previous question, Egypt refused to open the Rafah crossing point for Palestinians. And now US is trying to persuade Egypt to open the only corridor for the poor Palestinian civilians to live. But yes, I have a big story to say about the Russian influence and all of this. And you need to just go and think about the Russian reaction to what happened last Saturday. Russian reaction was through Lavrov, who gave a statement saying, we would like to see, it wasn't really kind of expressing sympathy. It was more like, we'd like to see Palestinian state at the 1967 border. They were Putin and the Russians were accusing America and the West of failing in the Middle East. This is very significant because it's a different reaction to Russia, who always had very close ties to Israel, who in 2008 kind of introduced visa-free regime with Israel, who in 2020 opened the Jewish Museum in Moscow. Just to say to you, according to the American media, and I read a lot of New York Times and Washington Post on this, Putin was talking 11 times with Netanyahu in 2020. Now the reaction is absent.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think Russia has decided to line up against Israel now? Why?
So now the Russia is kind of behaving like we are neutral, teaching Israel a lesson, because Israel remained neutral in the Ukraine crisis, refused to give bombs or munition to Ukraine, saying this may end up in Iranian side. So you have to remember that Israel has interest to have relations with Russia. First of all, it is Russia's presence in Syria. Israel needs them for that. Second of all, it's Russian Jews living in Russia. And the third of all, and we can speak about it later, is this close ties between Russia and Iran.
But in these ties, Russia and Iran, Iran is sending drones to Ukraine. Iran is helping Russia's war in Ukraine. Isn't it in exchange that Russia also has to support Iran's war against Israel? Do you see that happening? And do you see the convenience for Russia that suddenly, with this Israeli new conflict, Israel-Palestine conflict, there is no attention on the war in Ukraine? Is that also an element of why it suits Russia to have another conflict somewhere else?
Absolutely. First of all, Iran's influence in Israeli affairs, or in the latest affair, is significant. Iran is financing, aiding, and supporting terrorist organizations, Hamas.
And is Russia financing and supporting militarily Hamas, or is it only Iran?
Well, we don't know. It will be revealed at the later stage. The media is saying that the two Hamas leaders actually went to see Putin in Moscow recently. This kind of Middle Eastern kind of war suits Russians very well, because it is drawing attention of the West to the Middle East. It is also, it is also drawing out the military and economic, possibly, aid to Ukraine. Ukrainians have spotted this, and they are very worried that they might lose some of the support or some of the economic help due to the West being fully invested here. You have a biggest warship in the world, Gerald Ford, parked just outside Lebanon by the US, just minding the Hezbollah. Because, Israel will not be attacked we are not attacked only from the south, from Hamas, but from the north also, through Lebanon by Hezbollah, pro-Iranian Hezbollah. So this scenario has all the elements of becoming something that can affect the whole world. It is a very dangerous situation.
You and me have spoken before about the Russian influence in the Balkans. How do you see that now that you saw the rise of the Russians in Montenegro with a coup that is your home country? 450,000 Russians, I understand, have sign up for residence or for staying in Serbia. How do you see that with what you have just experienced in Tel Aviv in the last week?
It is my opinion that Russia itself will be pleased to reign chaos around the world. Just see the Nagorno-Karabakh. They didn't even pretend to stop the expulsion of 100,000 Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh. They didn't start to stop Azeris. And now we have a situation in the Balkans, and I don't really have enough information yet. I have to be careful about what I say, but there will be, just judging from what happened in Israel, further attempts of Russia to destabilize elsewhere in order to engage Western partners into kind of extinguishing the fire somewhere else. The more fires there are, the better for Russia, because right now we are in the beginning of the winter offensive in Ukraine. They are right now attacking Avdiivka, the town in eastern Donbass, which is actually a site of the big coke plant. They are attacking the infrastructure of Ukrainians to disable them from using energy this winter. And you've been in Ukraine, how cold the winters are there. So the whole process now is they're feeling, oh, good for us. Here is America and the West engaged in the Middle East. Ukrainians are showing support, rallying behind Israel, and we are here left, to do what we want. And I don't know if you remember the time when we were both at the same time reading this book about Putin by Masha Gessen. There she actually says that Putin grew up in a communal flat where there was a communal kitchen in St. Petersburg, and one of the people living with Putin in this small apartment was an Orthodox Jewish family, and with whom he had very, very close relations. So now, can you imagine from that, close relations from the guy who was there together with the Western partners, who would be very, very busy at this time trying to stop what's happening in the Middle East? We have a guy who's not talking, aloof, and saying, good for me, here is the fire, I can continue my efforts in Ukraine.
Dragana, thanks very much. I wish you a safe return or safe time where you are. My heart goes to all the Israelis and the Palestinian civilians who are going through hell right now, which I believe all of us in Kosovo know what it feels like, because we recently had a war. Hope you have a safe stay in continuation of your Tel Aviv time there.